Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm showing you how I created a 3D snake and how it actually really isn't that difficult, especially if you're not super arty. It's really easy to do. We're going to use tools that are going to do most of the hard work for us. So I'm starting with Snow White and mixing with some base coat because I want a milky base. I don't want it to be too opaque, and I'm just going to pop down a couple of layers of this, make sure it's nice and smooth and cure in between. Once that first layer is cured, I'm just going in with another one, and this is just to get the desired coverage. I don't want it to be too opaque, don't want it to be too sheer, and two coats seem to be perfect. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to cure that, and then I'm using some blooming gel, popping on a nice thin layer of this across the nail. And remember, with blooming gel you need to leave it uncured before you add in your other gel polishes, otherwise it just won't do anything. The whole point is that it helps it slip and slide around the nail. Next I'm taking Midori and I'm adding on some dots, really. Bit of like funny shape dots that don't have to be too circular, just in arched patterns around the nail, and this is just going to give a bit of a snaky, scaly effect on the nail underneath the 3D snake. So as you can see, the blooming gel is just making that Midori bloom out and smooth out on the edges, kind of ombres it a little bit, softens it off. And I'm going to do this on the bottom of the nail and then at the top as well. I'm just going to let that settle for a minute while it spreads out before I pop it back in the lamp, because once it goes in the lamp it will stop spreading, so you want to make sure that you've got the desired effect before you pop it in. Now that's cured, I'm just using our gel top coat nail sealer, and this is just a slightly thicker top coat, and all this is going to do is give me an extra layer of protection, because I'm going to go in and buff down the nail in a minute, because I'm going to be using chromes and I like to work on a matte background when I'm doing 3D work, just so everything stays where I want it to. So once that's cured, I'm going to take one of our white sanding blocks and just give the whole nail a buff down. So I do most of this off camera because I find it a little bit more difficult holding the nail out at a funny angle to buff it down, so I tend to just do the rest off camera. Once that's done, I'm going to dust off the excess, and then it's ready to go onto the 3D part. So we use now nail Tip Gel Adhesive, and to make it easy I'm mixing it with some of our pure green acrylic powder, and this means that we don't need to paint the whole thing at the end, and it means we can do textures and patterns on it and it'll keep that 3D effect, instead of going over it with a gel polish later on and ruining all of the kind of detail that we've made in 3D form. So it's not always the easiest to mix these together. You do have to have a little bit of patience. It can be a little bit messy because I chuck things everywhere when it comes to powders, so do be careful with this. Make sure you've got your gloves on as well to work with it. And with our nail tip gel adhesive, if you would like to use your gloves to touch it or any of your tools, I would suggest dipping them just in some of our gel residue remover, and it'll stop any of that product sticking. So that's what I go in and do next. So I'm just rolling that into like a little sausage in between my gloves with some gel residue remover on there, and then I'm going to pop it on the nail and do it like diagonally across the nail and then pull it round the corner, because this is going to be the middle of the snake. I'm going to add a head on one side and then I'm going to do another bit of the body wrapping around the nail as well. So one thing when you're doing 3D work that goes to the edge of the nail, you kind of want to smooth it down a little bit because you don't want it to be too bulky next to where the finger will be, because it can be uncomfortable. So I'm just using one of our silicone tools and just dabbing that on there with some gel residue remover just to smooth it all out. Once I'm happy with that, I'm just going in with another piece and just attaching that to that bit. And I haven't cured any of this 3D section yet because I want it to blend seamlessly. So I'm just getting the head in the right position, and then I'm just going to shape that because I want it to be a little bit more diamond shaped than round or square. As you can see here, I'm just going in and adding those points in at the front of the head. I've just added on another section for the body to go across the nail further up, and I have just smoothed that all out. I did do a little bit of this off camera just to speed things up a little bit so you weren't watching the same process over and over again, but doing exactly the same as I did. And as you can see, I'm just taking our Cuticle tool, and the texture on this is just like scales. So I'm literally running this across the uncured nail tip gel adhesive, and it just creates a scale effect. You can go around the edges. I did do a little bit of that as well, and over the head a little bit. And there we go, that's so easy, isn't it? And I'm just going to go back around the edges and just make sure I haven't squished it down too much with that tool. And you want to be relatively quick with this because it does have some self-leveling properties, so you don't want to spend too long faffing around with the sides because you will lose some of the definition on the scales. I'm going to pop that into cure and then take Serious Black and just a detail brush, and we're just going to add on some eyes at the side of the snake. I'm doing this really simply. I don't want anything too complicated because it's a bit of a faffier design. You want to keep all of the elements nice and simple. And then I'm just adding on a little tongue as well. Once that's cured, I'm taking Snow White and just a fanned out brush. This is great for doing things like ombre and that kind of thing, and just kind of dry brushing on the Snow White over the scales. I don't want to cover the whole thing. I literally just want a little bit of texture adding in there, and I want to keep the scale texture. So put a little bit of product on your brush and wipe most of it back off before you do this. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to pop it into cure, and then I'm taking Serious Black again and just that same brush and doing exactly the same process, just dry brushing some Serious Black on there. I'm going to do a little bit of a swirly pattern across it, but something really simple just to give it a little bit of texture and detail, because snakes do have a bit of a pattern on their backs as well, and I'm going to pull that down the head too. But like I say, make sure you've only got a tiny bit of product on your brush. I'm just going around the mouth as well, just a tiny bit, just to add some darkness around there too. Once that's cured, I'm taking some of this emerald chrome pigment, and this is like an iridescent, a little bit see-through chrome pigment. So I like to use this just to make things glow a little bit, and I'm just dabbing that on. I'm not putting it all over the snake, literally just dabbing it on in little sections, just to give it a bit of shine. And finally, I'm just going to take some top coat and do a nice thin layer across the nail. You want to make sure that it doesn't pool around your 3D elements, so make sure you pop the product on there and kind of wipe it back off around those 3D bits, and make sure it's just not too much product. Like I say, a nice thin layer. And once that's cured, you're all done. See, it really isn't that complicated. It's much simpler than it seems, I think, anyway. If you give this a go, we'd love to see your attempt at it. Make sure to tag us. If you want any of the products, they'll be tagged down below, and we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.